Airline CEOs are warning that the spring travel rush is colliding with the Washington movement. As funding Santa leaves TSA officers with zero paychecks and turns airport security into the latest casualties of a partial government shutdown. In an unusually blunt open letter with that hides 10 major U.S. passenger and cargo airlines, including Delta, American, Southwest, United, JetBlue, UPS, and FedEx, are urging Congress to restore funding to the Department of Homeland Security and pass laws that guarantee TSA officers and air traffic controllers get paid during any future shutdowns. Welcome to Business Insights Daily. I'm your host, Shane. Today, we're going to the front lines of the government shutdown. You don't see on C-SPAN. You see in the security line. The CEOs of 10 major U.S. airlines are sounding the alarm about funding standoff in Washington that's leaving transportation and security administration officers with $0 paychecks and turning air travel into what they call political football. Just spring break crowds at the airports. What if the person screaming the bag isn't getting paid? As you listen, I want you to hold this question in mind. What does it do to the system and to the safety when the people who screen the bags, patrol the checkpoints, and guide planes in the skies are told to keep working? But not everyone is given a paycheck. The shutdown you can feel at the airport. Let's start with what's actually happening. For nearly a month, the U.S. government has been in partial shutdown by thanks to the Department of Homeland Security, the Home TSA, and many airport customs and security functions. Because TSA and air traffic controllers are considered essential workers, they are required to report to duty even when the government isn't funded. But here's the catch. When payday arrived last Friday, many officers received pay stubs that said $0. In other words, they're working full-time without a paycheck, with a promise of payback someday, after Congress and the White House resolve the same. Unsurprisingly, some have started to stay home. TSA and DHS officials say hundreds of officers have resigned or called in sick since the shutdown began. And airports around the country are reporting longer lines, more delays at security checkpoints, and flights leaving passengers stuck in queues. This is simply unacceptable. That's the backdrop for the unusually blunt open letter published over the long weekend. The CEOs of the largest passenger airline, including Delta, American, Southwest, United, JetBlue, and Alaska, along with leaders of cargo giants UPS, FedEx, and Atlas Air, signed a joint message to Congress pleading for immediate action. Once again, air traffic is the political football of another government shutdown throughout, warning that Americans are tired of the long lines at airports, travel delays, and flight cancellations caused by shutdown after shutdown. They highlighted new polling showed roughly 9 out of 10 Americans believe TSA agents should be paid during shutdowns. And then they point out the moment that seems to have been pushed from the edge. On Friday, TSA officers received a $0 paycheck. That is simply unacceptable. Who really controls the travel day? Embedded in that letter is a big question. Who actually controls what happens in the day that you fly? The airline that you bought your ticket from? Or the lawmakers deciding whether the person at the checkpoint gets paid? These executives aren't just venting, they're endorsing specific bills with very on-the-nose names. The Aviation Funding Security Solvency Act, the Aviation Funding Stability Act, and the Keep America Flying Act. So, together, those measures guarantee that TSA officers, customs officers, and air traffic controllers get paid during any future shutdown, effectively taking them off the political chessboard. Why this shutdown and why it's different. So how did we end up here? This partial shutdown is focused on the Department of Homeland Security, after lawmakers failed to agree on funding tied to immigration enforcement and border policy. Congressional Democrats have refused to pass the DHS funding bill without new restrictions on certain enforcement practices, while Republicans have resisted those changes, neither side has agreed. This isn't the first shutdown to affect aviation workers. In fact, it's the third in less than a year where TSA officers have worked without pay, waiting weeks for back pay once the government reopens. But this time, several things are different. First, the timing. Airlines are headed in what they expect to be a record spring travel season, with the estimated 171 million passengers expected to fly out on U.S. carriers in just a few weeks. Spring break is already underway, and there are bigger events on the horizon. America's 250th anniversary celebration and lead up to the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which will bring huge numbers of international visitors. Second, there's fatigue, not just among workers but among passengers. Airline executives say that the customers are already frustrated by disruption and they're worried about tying airport operation to recurring political fights, which is eroding trust in the system itself. The human side, working for $0. It's easy to talk about the TSA officers and aircraft controllers like categories in a chart, but behind those labels, are people trying to pay rent, buy groceries, and put gas in the car. In their letter, the CEOs quote what has become kind of a refrain. It's difficult, if not impossible, to put food on the table, gas in the car, and pay rent when you're not getting paid at all. That's not a theoretical concern. Some officers are picking up secondary jobs, others are turning to credit cards, and some are simply deciding they can't do this every time college deadlines. For safety and performance standpoint, the worry is obvious. If you're screening hundreds of thousands of passengers a day, you're guiding planes through crowded airspace, how can you stay sharp when you're also doing the mental math of unpaid bills and missed rent? Which raises a third uncomfortable question. What is this really worth to us? As travelers, as voters, to have a safe, predictable aviation system, and are we willing to pay for that stability even when politics get messy? For airlines, this is more than a public relations issue. It's a capacity and reliability problem. So let's return to the three questions you've been reading about this story. What happens when the person screening your bag isn't getting paid? Who really controls your travel day? Airlines or lawmakers? And what is a safe, stable aviation system like? So the next time you're inching through the security line, shoes off, lockups out, perhaps kids in tow, you might think about the people in front of X-ray machine. In fact, right now, some of them are doing that job without a paycheck. Because ultimately, this isn't just a story about airlines versus Congress. It's a story about how we value the invisible infrastructure that makes it possible to move 171 million people through the skies a single season, and who we ask to carry the cost when politics breaks down. I'm Shank, and this is Business Insights. Stay informed and stay ahead. And thank you for listening.